Welcome to listen Soforcast. This episode will cover Nvidia, and a bit differently than earlier, we will speak English. So I hope you can stay with us until the end. And I believe we might hear some stories which most probably will somehow link you to this today's topic. I have discussed a few times between Mark, who is our guest, and I know he's a really funny guy, and we'll have some funny laughs. So not more about that, but Mark, can you say something about yourself?
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on here. So my name is Mark Hammarstedt, and I'm Swedish, half Norwegian actually, and I'm based in the south of Sweden, in Malmö. I've been working within the IT industry for the past 20 years, you could say.
Mm.
I started out my career with IBM and also spent some time with a system integrator called Proact. But for the past 10 years, I've been working with innovation, IoT, AI, with a focus on manufacturing and retail, actually. And I've been with Nvidia for a little over 1 year now. So, and I'm responsible for manufacturing and retail in the region here, meaning the Nordics, right? So it's been some crazy days because I have not met my colleagues since I was hired, actually, since the interview process. So usually I tell my manager that I really like Nvidia because I haven't met these guys really. So, but no, it's crazy days,
Yeah.
but that's the truth.
So I have a few questions. You said that you have Norwegian. How do you manage in Sweden if you had Norwegian?
Well, usually I try to hide that when I was younger, right? Because he was my mother. So, but now I'm very proud
Mm.
of that, of course, because Norway has been doing a lot better than Sweden. But I think it's a very similar culture.
Yeah.
I grew up in Gothenburg, and that you're very close to Oslo,
Yeah.
right? So similar personality and similar sense of humor and things like that. But I mean, from a work perspective, Norway is very different than Sweden. And I think that, to be honest with you, I think Finland and Sweden are probably the countries who are the most similar in the Nordic
Okay.
region, right?
Yeah.
Because you also have a manufacturing base in Finland, like we do in
Mm.
Sweden. You have a strong public sector. You have a couple of large dominating companies like
Mm.
Nokia, for example. And this is very similar to the setup we have in
Yeah.
Sweden. Denmark is focused on some other verticals, life science, healthcare, consumer products, and then Norway, of course, is oil and gas
Yeah.
primarily.
But those have you noticed in your work that are there a lot of similarities? You said that there are similarities between Finland and Sweden when it comes to the companies. But if you look at the companies and the countries from the Nvidia perspective, do you find
Mm.
there's a lot of similarities? Are you using the same solutions in the different countries, or
Yeah.
do we differentiate between each others by the way we use your products?
No, I wouldn't say so, to be honest. Of course, there are some differences, but I think that the industry determines what kind of technology.
Mm.
So some of our solutions are relevant for many industries, but some of them are specific for the chemical industry or the process industry, for example. So those tend to scale over regardless of what kind of country we're talking about. And I think that Finland, like Sweden, is also a bit of a experimental ground for new technology. Even though we are perhaps by nature quite, not the most, outgoing people and all of that, we are not afraid of new
Mm.
technology. So if you compare the Nordic countries, Finland and Sweden, to Germany, for example, I think the appetite for
Mm.
disruption is much larger,
Mm.
right? So this is something that I think we share.
Mm.
Finland and Sweden are two of the leading countries in AI
Mm.
deployment in the world today. And I think this is the reason why we have a research unit in Helsinki, actually, with about 50 people working there, mainly focusing on our gaming products. But still, the company sees the region as not the largest, of course, in terms of revenue, but there's a lot of interesting things happening here. And they're thinking if they succeed here, they will succeed in other places as well.
You said earlier that you're doing a lot of research and you mentioned AI. Was that the
Yeah,
reason why you chose Nvidia a year ago when you choose to be
yeah,
when you choose to not to
yeah.
meet your colleagues for 1 year?
Exactly. No, I met them during the interview process, so I know a little bit, and I have met one or two of them on a lunch as well. But we know each other virtually, essentially. But no, I think that I joined Nvidia because they are the dominating company inside of AI at the moment. There is no other company who has that footprint, whether it be hardware or software, in the AI space at the moment. They are doing some tremendous things in research for healthcare, for automotive, in manufacturing, retail, and I just saw them everywhere. I met the team, and I really connected
Mm,
with the guys who are working here. I like the culture,
mm,
and maybe you should edit this out, but we are not the best organized company in the world. We are still a startup, even though we are a big company today with 25,000 employees and 20 billion US dollars in revenue. We are still run like a startup a little bit. And this people say, we run like a startup even though we're big. But at Nvidia, you could really feel
mm,
it. You make your own future. It's a flat organization, and I think that we live on innovation. It's not something that is nice to have. It's our DNA
mm,
to do that, right? And I was really appealed by that because this is where creativity and also the stimulation to go and look for new revenue streams. This is the place where you really can do those things. The other thing I think is very important, that AI, different to some of the other emerging technologies, right? The other buzzwords, it scales.
mm,
There's a lot of money in it for us, but also for our
mm,
customers and our
mm.
partners, right? And at the end of the day, that is what it's all
Yeah,
about.
this is really interesting because you said earlier that here in Finland and Sweden there are a lot of customers who are sort of like going further by experimenting different kind of things, and then you say that you were working in a startup that has only 25,000 employees. So
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
for but once I'm listening to you, I feel like that somehow you've been able to link that a unique way of doing things in a global company, in a sort of like startup more mindset with the companies that feel like that, hey, we want to use this AI or other product, but we really need to start with small and test while we are learning. So
Mm.
I feel like you're able to link those two together. Am I right with that one, or is it wrong?
No, I think that is correct. I mean, we are seeing some large scale deployments today, and this is also something similar between Finland and
Mm,
Sweden, and they are particularly run by the government, the universities, in conjunction with the large
mm,
enterprises, right? So there we see some heavy investments in AI, regardless of what vertical you're working in. There's a lot of money coming in there right now. But if you look at the traditional industries, what they are doing for their own company, yes, they start
mm,
small, but still, I think that the cases that we are seeing compared to what I did when I was working with IoT, I was working with IoT for about 6 years, and IoT I felt was really interesting technology, and it was an enabler
mm,
for other things, right? But the money in that was never really
yeah.
there, in my opinion. Still, is not really there. Whereas in AI, the cases become big. It involves many different parts of the company, and essentially, what we're doing is helping the companies automate manual processes. If I were to pin down AI into one word, I'd say we're helping our customers replace manual work with technology. And if a company wants to stay competitive, and especially in small countries like ours too, we need to stay ahead of the pack, because we're facing heavy competition from Asia, from other places in Europe, North America, South America, and This is probably why, as you put it, the willingness to experiment is
Mm.
there in our
Yeah.
markets.
I actually share the same feeling as you say that to me, AI is helping people to make right decisions. Is at least those cases where I've been working with AI is that we're trying to automate some decisions, and I this is funny because I have to ask this from you. I have a sort of like three scale way of thinking how AI works, that maybe 70 to 75% of the different kind of decisions can be automated. Then I have this roughly 20 to 25% can be sort of like guided. The AI guides you to make the decision. And maybe the
Mm.
5% around that is something that the actual human has to make the whole decision. So that's the way I trying to simplify what the AI is doing for some specific process or some specific question that companies are trying to solve. I don't know. How do you see that? Am I fully wrong, or is there some guidelines that are similar to the cases that you've been working with?
Yeah, I think so, because I mean we have to understand that some of the things, the what we're trying to do here is give the decision makers better material to work with,
Mm,
right? More insight into what they're doing. So even though the human, so to speak, element of it is 5%, the most
mm,
important is with the humans, of course. So that's what we're doing. We're collecting and giving. I'm giving you better
yeah,
options to make a decision on where to park your car, what loan to take, etc.
yeah,
Right? So it's meant like an help, and I also have to say that with all these emerging technologies, I mean, we've all seen the movies, right? I remember 2001. I saw that was probably the first AI movie, Stanley Kubrick, and the robots are taking over and all of that, and no, we don't need
mm,
humans anymore. That's
yeah,
not at all what it's about, right? It's about replacing manual work that is time consuming and brings very little
yeah,
value, and instead empowering the employees to focus on other
yeah,
things. So, for example, we are both big mining countries, right? And what we see today is that the mining companies have a policy of no people in a mine within 10 years. No humans at all. They're going to have self-driving vehicles, and they're going to have autonomous robots who's doing the
okay,
drilling and things like that. And the reason is that it's not to sell them short at all, people working in mines, but there is little they can do except for the information that they have gathered before, right? But if you instead let somebody else do this, you automate this process, you can have
mm,
sensors that analyzes what's happening down there to give them better decisions on where to drill, for
yeah,
example, right? And that means that probably in the long term, there are going to be fewer people, fewer jobs in a mine, but there are going to be more jobs in the data science teams, for
yeah,
example. So it's a change, but we also have to have respect for that, right? Because I'm getting older. I'm 46, so I'm also soon coming to the point that everything is moving so fast and all of that. So we have to have respect for the fact that not everybody wants to be a data scientist. Not everybody want to be, some people like working with their hands and things like that, and that is still going to be very valid. It's just that maybe in the future there are going to be fewer of those opportunities, which I don't think is something we should be
mm,
afraid of, because the jobs that have been created are going to be probably better paid as well.
yeah. You said about mining companies and also the healthcare and cars that we drive. I also have a car that helps me to park it. So
Yeah,
it's nothing like the well. I'm keen to follow what happens in the EV area, and I've been looking this
yeah,
Chinese Xpeng company and whatever Neo and Tesla how they are working, and they're sort of like taking the steps further how automatically the cars can, for example, park themselves quite easily
mm,
nowadays, at least when you look at the YouTube videos. But what are the sort of like, uh, do you easily find sort of basic use cases where maybe the listener can link him or herself to Nvidia that what you are doing?
yeah.
Are there sort of like easy case studies that are,
Yeah,
hey, in your
absolutely.
daily life, actually we are helping you over here?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That is, and I will get to that later. I think that Nvidia is doing two things essentially. We're doing hardware, the
Mm,
GPUs, which we invented in 1993. And not to be technical, but the GPU differentiates itself from a CPU with the amount of cores and the parallel architecture that comes with it. And this is obviously ideal for anybody who wants to process many different cores of data at the same time, as opposed to small and large data sets, many small, right? And this is
mm,
optimized for anything that is graphic in nature. So it found its first home in the gaming industry.
mm,
This is where we invented it for the gaming industry. And what we did after 10, 15 years or so was to find out that this AI revolution that is starting to happen, that is the same technology that we are using for gaming. It is
mm,
100% the same technology, and it's replicable to many other industries. So the first step we took was out of gaming was to go into the automotive, right?
yeah.
Because if you look at the automotive industry, I think they have the biggest challenge they have today is energy consumption, right?
Mm,
And that is a problem for them from an environmental concern, but also for you and I as consumers, the prices for gas and all of that, right? So what we have been doing is to embed our technology in the cars to enable small pieces of self-driving autonomous drive, right? And this, what you do is that you train what we call a neural network. So you build a small computer inside of the car under your chair or something like that, right? And you train it to understand that, okay, uh, it's essentially a map that you put down into the computer, and you train it to understand that moving target here, that means a human or an elk or something like that, stop. That's
mm,
essentially
mm,
how it starts. And we scaled that out to, obviously people want to have 100% self-driving cars, and I think we are a little bit, a couple of years away from that. But the first couple of use cases we found was, like you said, self-parking, for example.
yeah.
Small elements of where it's still secure. The chances of something going really wrong there is quite limited, right? Then we took it to the next step, which is, for instance, large animal detection, automatic brake. You see that, right? That is typical NVIDIA technology. If you look at the healthcare side of the business, we see our GPUs, and also the other thing that we're doing is the CUDA software stack, which is essentially an API to build applications on top of our GPUs. It's for free. Anybody who buys our GPU hardware gets the CUDA software stack on top. And we have a similar solution to GitHub. We call it the NGC, which is a cloud repository where you can download software for free, application frameworks, and also sometimes solutions built by our partners on the CUDA in the CUDA software language, and start building their own solutions, right? So we moved into a lot of research areas in the healthcare where they are using large, we call them supercomputers, extremely fast to
Mm,
analyze, for example, molecules or DNA, things like that. And also now moving into the autonomous side of the medical instruments, for example. So things that are being used in operations and things like that. We enable cameras inside of this, for example, and things like that. But like you said, Drive, which is our platform for cars, is used today by I think most of the
mm,
large car manufacturers. So if there is a self parking element in it, there are some security measurements in terms of large animal detection, and also we started to work with the UX side. In the new Mercedes cars, for example, you can see that you can actually have touchscreen in your front window, right, to change the music or turn on off the airbag and things like that. If you see this in a car, there's a good chance that that is
Mm.
Nvidia technology behind that.
So most probably, I've been driving a few years already with Nvidia
I think so.
microchip in my car, and I didn't even know.
Yes, and we're very thankful for that because it's so this is very mature, and healthcare is very mature as well,
Yeah.
and a lot of research being made there together with universities, governments, but also the large healthcare companies, GlaxoSmithKline, AstraZeneca, and the likes, right, Johnson and
Mm.
Johnson, and what we are now doing is trying to scale this out to other verticals where manufacturing
Yeah.
and retail I'm responsible for are two of those that is
Yeah.
not as mature. And when I say mature, the revenue for Nvidia is not of that size yet, but we're getting there very quickly. We're moving into finance, fraud detection, things like that.
Mm.
And obviously, energy as well is becoming utilities, smart grids, things like that, right? That is also becoming a focus area for us.
So basically, the way we are using AI as a part of our daily lives is sort of like spreading, and that's something that is also putting you further with those companies. And I think the reason why we are here today, you and me, Mark, is that we are also using Nvidia as part of our solution
Yeah.
when it comes to manufacturing side, and we are using that for making the sort of a 3D virtualization.
Mm.
And it's a big part of that, basic part of that solution environment. Do you have is that really sort of like familiar also to you? Do you have that kind of cases also somewhere else in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you look at 3D CAD, that is something that has been a fantastic product when it came. Actually, 25 years ago, the 3D CAD came, and it allowed people to go from paper and pen to a computer.
Mm.
Right. I think that world has been very static since then. To be honest with you, that means that it's how should I say, the capability or the ability to be agile and change that environment has been very, very limited. And I think that our GPU technology today allows you to build a modern infrastructure that comes with a flexibility where you
Mm.
also can, let's say, I mean, most companies today, or not most, but a lot of them, they might have a core product, right? And that could be a phone or a car or whatever, and that can be a huge success. But very few companies can do the same thing year in, year out. You have to have the flexibility, you have to have the capability of changing your production
Mm.
during the course of even a year today, right? This is how fast things are moving. So you need a flexible infrastructure and environment to work with. And some of them are looking to use the cloud for their 3D CAD, right? And even though we are getting there, you are going to lose a lot of the capabilities in terms of the GPUs, the acceleration of the graphic components are not available in the cloud. There are roadmaps for that, and it will come, but as for now, it's not really there, right? So still we see a lot of customers asking us, can you provide a good flexible infrastructure for our 3D CAD environments, but also give us the possibility to share this environment with more people, right? So we
Mm.
could also have, everything from external consultants to subcontractors, things
Mm.
like that, who want to work on the same project, but with limited access, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way you'd have to do this up until a few years ago was essentially to replicate that environment in all, one in Finland, one in Brazil, one in Norway, right? Now you can manage it from one place, right? And I think this is really what we have been doing, or you have been using our technology to enable this solution, because Nvidia never builds the end solution. We give you the piece of the puzzle. In this case, we're giving you the hardware that can accelerate this application, right? But we don't build the servers and we don't build the applications, right? So I think this what you have been doing in Finland is something that we have seen in some other places, but would like to see more of.
Yeah, I know that the end customer is really getting a lot of beneficial from that solution. That's something that we've been discussing with them several times, and especially during this difficult year that we're facing globally, it has helped them a lot. So that you have that flexibility that you can move work around the world if that's being required, but still all the things that you said earlier, that you have the central management, is still you're still able to have it. So it's been really good for them.
Yeah, and I think that this was one of the first things that we saw in this COVID world, right?
Yeah.
The need for remote work, and now we're talking about quite advanced remote work, construction and design, right? But even the most simple work, like we're doing here, for example, sitting in front of computers, right? There was a lot of emphasis on this, and this was good for Nvidia because the Provis side of our business was obviously affected in a very good way for that, right? But I also think, to be honest with you, that even if we get the vaccines, hopefully soon, the days of huge meetings, traveling all over the world for projects, is over, right?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that we are going to go out and meet our customers and partners, but a lot of it is going to be remote. So this is going to continue.
Yeah.
Because I can give you a good example. I'm not going to mention them by name, but we have a customer here in Sweden that is it's quite famous company. They have two revenue streams. One is subscriptions of their product, and the other one is commercials. They're selling airtime on their platform, so to speak. And the revenue for their commercials went down 20% Q2 last year.
Yeah.
But the profit of the company went up 5%. How did that happen? It happened because nobody was traveling, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's also an economic interest in the company to make such an investment, like we're talking about in Finland, right? Because it enables people to work from where they are based, and traveling across the world or across the region today, right, is very expensive, and it also strikes at the environment in a way. So it's a win-win situation. Means that it's a pretty good KPI to have when you're looking to make this investment as a customer.
Thank you for listening to this first part of the Nvidia podcast. We decided to split the podcast in two different parts because we had so many things to say. You will find us from sofor.fi, sofor.fi web pages, and from LinkedIn. But if you too like us, please give us a thumb and remember to share us with your colleagues and friends. But remember that we will continue the Nvidia story in a second part. So please follow us and hear what Mark has to say. I have to give you a small spoiler. It was excellent. But now, thank you for listening to this part.